have a global expert with us. Our next guest is Byahatti, and Ram is coming to us directly from Bangalore in India. So Ram, go ahead and toggle your camera on and please join us. Ram, great to have you here. So Ram has over 28 years of experience in IT services, including offering management, solution architecture, enterprise architecture, hybrid cloud solutions, cloud transformation and adoption programs, and orchestration, pre-sales, IT consultant, transitions, and delivery. Ram is presently working for NTT as the national head for MultiCloud solutions. He has worked with large Fortune 500 companies around the world and consulted on the cloud adoption journey, service improvement programs, and IT transformation projects. Ram, it's a real pleasure to have you directly from Bangalore, India, to the world, sharing your expertise. Very thankful to have you with us.
Thank you, Jose. Hello, everyone. Good morning. All right. I'm going to talk about the cloud strategy for digital transformation. And all of us, pretty much across all the geographies or all the sectors, we are going through the churn, and the COVID situation is with us for quite some time, 2020 and beyond. And during these tough times, cloud strategy or digital transformation are major focus areas. So I want to spend some time on how to embark on this journey to cloud. So I'm basically going to talk about one-on-one level for different type of cloud that we are seeing. What are the key drivers for cloud adoption? What are the workloads that are either born on cloud or suited for cloud? Some of the architecture decisions or best practices that we see in this area. And since everybody is talking about journey to cloud, it starts with migration of workloads as well. So I'm going to touch the migration aspects for journey to cloud, and some emerging trends as we see a lot of traction in cloud, how to manage cloud when your cloud gets complex. So how do you, so because you will have a private cloud, you will have a public cloud, you will have multi-cloud. So how do you manage your workloads, your applications when it's like beyond control sometimes, right? So that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to start with some statistics, and I'm hoping most of you are aware of these things as well, but a starter. So Gartner said more than a year back that nowadays from the surveys that were done involving more than 2,000 companies across the world, across the geographies, 75% of the companies have cloud first strategy, which means like when you're launching any application, when you're launching any marketing campaign, or when you're launching any offering, new software packages, etc. So ideally, the companies are looking at cloud, which is a platform for this new application or new offering or new software package. The second pointer is like last week, if you followed Economic Times or Wall Street Journal, etc. So IBM CEO Arvind, he mentioned that cloud is $1 trillion market to pursue. So it's very huge. Third one is Gartner. For this year, they're talking about more than $250 billion in cloud revenues from different companies and different services. So a lot of companies obviously have made investment in cloud, and there are many which are coming into cloud. And the one which are already there, they are expanding further and getting into the new avenues, new services, going up the value chain. So when we talk about cloud in one breath, so there are different flavors, there are different variants. I just wanted all of us to be on the same page. So it has different connotations. So if you are having your applications in either your data center or third party co-located, etc., that is also a cloud. However, it's not that everything there is cloud service, but a lot of them over a period of time, customers have standardized systems instead of a lot of heterogeneous systems, etc. So they have standardized on server, they have standardized on virtual layer. They have kind of done the whole data center SDDC, software defined data center. So with standardization, with virtualization, you can get the benefits of cloud, and you can offer the services which are hosted on top of this via catalog. Then once you have realized some of the benefits of private cloud, but most of those things still work on CapEx model, capital expenditure. So clients, they want to move workloads onto public cloud. Why? Because you can launch your systems, you can launch your applications in a matter of minutes. You need connectivity there, and your current approval cycle in the current data center is taking time. If you're a developer, most likely you're not in good terms with your IT admin team because they are taking time, and there are always problems. There's a China wall in between sometimes. So there is a use case for hybrid cloud where you start extending your private cloud into public cloud. Then there are integration use cases in this space, which are around monitoring. Once you're on public cloud, what monitoring tools you want to use? Can you leverage your current IT service management systems? Do you want to create new networks in the public cloud, or do you want to stretch your existing network policies or VLANs, etc., onto public cloud? So those options are also available. Then we see the use case for multi-cloud. So this is where, now, for example, you have some workloads on AWS. Now you think some of this can be, or the new workload from data center can be best suited for Azure. For reasons, it might be something like, let's say, Active Directory synchronization or federation, where Azure might be better than AWS, just as an example. So you start looking at having workloads in different clouds, AWS, Azure, or Google, or Alibaba, or IBM Cloud, etc. So it's quite common that we see a lot of customers having more than 5 clouds along with their on-prem private cloud. So that's what multi-cloud is. So nowadays there is this concept of build your application once and run anywhere with Docker, Kubernetes, etc. So it has picked up tremendous traction nowadays. So then in that case, you can actually run this workload wherever. So depending on some of the parameters like cost, scalability, or provisioning time, or management ease. So you can run your application and realize benefits. By looking at this, obviously there is no one size which fits all the requirements. There is no one client which can take everything as it is and stitch a solution. So obviously there is no one solution which fits every client. It is all based on the requirements. It's all based on the cloud strategy, cloud roadmap that is agreed by both the service provider and service consumer. I have a chart which I will talk about it. So these are the cloud adoption drivers. Why you want to go to cloud? So first one is agility and scalability. So for example, if I need a VM, I will get it in let's say 3 minutes in any of the platforms. If I want to increase my workload during quarter end, I can do that by setting up a policy which is like. And if I want to reduce during the weekend where none of my employees are working, instead of let's say 5 web server, I need 1 web server during the weekend. I can do those scalability adjustments by defining the auto scaling policies. So cloud gives me that flexibility. Next one is TCO and OpEx, right? So you can actually spin the instances when you have a need. For example, if you have a batch job that runs in the night, you can actually run a workload for a couple of hours in the night and then close that VM or close that task and terminate all the resources. So that's the beauty of cloud. So you're completely on OpEx. I'll give another example, like if you have to run a data warehousing query in your data center, it means like somebody has to come do the design of that data warehousing solution in your data center, get your requirements, design some dashboards, then you are ready to run your queries and get some benefits. So in a cloud, you straight away go with your SQL queries, run those queries, and you just pay for the amount of time that query takes. If it takes, let's say, 10 seconds, you pay for 10 seconds. That also means that you don't have to spend $1 million to do all this SDLC, right? Software design, software development lifecycle to have that data warehousing solution. Now, since data center also is a cloud, so there are aspects which you can do via data center refresh or modernization by using cloud type of capabilities which are offered by players like Dell or HP, etc. So they have specific workloads for big data or virtualization platform or VDI, virtual desktop, or if you are running SAP, so that's also possible. Nowadays, organizations are going cloud native, which means like you are basically converting your legacy applications into microservices. So they are decoupled. You can scale up, scale down these decoupled microservices according to the requirements, and you can have faster releases. So with your legacy monolithic application, earlier it used to take let's say 2 years for one release. Nowadays we see multiple companies doing releases every 1 or 2 weeks. It's quite common. Another example of adopting cloud is global distributed workforce. Like if you have companies in different parts of the geography, having the cloud footprint, for example, DNS services, load balancers, servers, then the CDN solution, for example, these are some of them. So it's quite expensive. So cloud can give you all those benefits wherein it can connect you to the nearest location, nearest region, nearest availability zone where your users are, and you can host the workloads in those locations, in those availability zones. So that you have improvement in terms of your network connectivity, basically latency also comes down. The last but one is provisioning cycle, higher productivity. So provisioning cycle, as I said, since software development lifecycle has come down now with agile methodology, you really don't have 1 year, 1.5 year cycles for releasing products. So which means infrastructure also has to take care of those business requirements, and infrastructure should be provisioned along with the agile or the sprints. So sometimes you provision and then deprovision. You have a test environment, you have dev environment, there are QA tests. Some of them, they after the work is done, after testing is done, that environment needs to be decommissioned. So cloud helps with those agile requirements. And nowadays, again, the last point here is about the API economy. So let's say you are a retail company, you want to connect your systems to the credit card companies. Credit card companies in turn want to connect with social security or credit score companies. So all that thing is happening via API, and you basically open up your API services and put requests, API requests, post or get, etc. with these third parties which are trusted, and then get responses and go with your business. So there are a lot of businesses which are API driven. Then this was like pre-2020, and in 2020 we all encountered this situation. So what is happening with the advent of COVID-19? So a lot of companies, we see that they are changing the financial model from capex to opex. So cloud, it's one of its native capability, which is opex. So that's why there is a major drive with cloud first and other strategies. Then we are also seeing workforce working from home. Suddenly, like we started seeing millions and millions of employees from thousands of companies started working from home, and it had to be enabled. So where do you enable? Cloud is the best platform to do that. Then collaboration, productivity tools. Beside connecting your system, that's not the only use case. You want to have a conference call, you want to do whiteboard session with your colleagues, you want to have chat, you have different things for improving productive, sharing file, etc. Right? So things like Microsoft Teams or Cisco WebEx. So they are very relevant in these times. Automation, right? So this is where infrastructure as a code, DevOps, automated approval. So automation is a big theme, and by default, everything is automated in cloud. When you define any deployment, it will tell you, do you want to download this JSON file? Do you want to download this ARM template? Which is a code. Whatever you're doing in the portal or CLI, is basically backend is a code. So that is very important nowadays. And you can make changes by downloading that and deploy it elsewhere, or the code can be reused. We are also seeing industry-specific solutions here. So I've just given one example. So for example, if it is a retail industry, so what they are doing is for any customer or any buyer who wants to go into the retail shop, they will have a ID. It can be there in the phone itself, and then one needs to download that app and then log into that shop. Then one gets appointment, go to the shop. Then if there is a queue, it will tell you have to wait 10 minutes. Once that person is let inside the shop, then he or she will do the shopping, then do the online payment and analytic solutions. You can get details on who made what purchase, what is getting more traction, which product, how to position. This person likes this product, this person like the online shopping and both offline shopping. There are specific solutions that are emerging. So this everything can be developed in cloud. Workload consideration. So when you have any applications, obviously a developer along with the IT admin needs to assess the requirements, whether it is storage needs, compute need, whether it requires a bare metal. If it is like a GPU type of a workload, it requires a server by itself. Then there are security requirements on encryption, the keys, which hold the secret certificates, etc. Then there are IAM policies, identity access management. Then there is role-based access control, who will do what in the cloud world. Then there is SSO or federated login. For example, if I have a web app or mobile app, I would let my user log in via his or her Facebook ID or Google ID, right? So that's very common nowadays. So I can facilitate federated third-party authentications. So cloud will help with any of those aspects. Then audits, like some companies, they are very keen with facility inspection, ISO 27000, SOX, etc. So if it is facility inspection, etc., cloud is not really a good candidate because they don't let you visit their facility, right? And by default, everything is shared there, the infrastructure. So the audit and compliance needs need to be evaluated properly. There are workloads where you can have them portable. For example, if you have some workloads on-prem and you can extend them onto cloud, and once you think they are not good there, you can bring it back to on-prem. You can also leverage, bring your own licenses between on-prem and public cloud. All those options are available. There is this concept of pets and cattle. Basically, what it says in a nutshell is like it's talking about immutable infrastructure. So if there is a problem with server or a workload, it's easier in cloud to kill that workload, terminate that workload, and bring it back and put your application there in a matter of minutes and get going, rather than spending 2 hours, 3 hours debugging what's happening on the infrastructure. That's the cattle analogy. Pets is basically you have, let's say, an application like SAP or HRMS, employee salary type of application, which is critical, sensitive, that you can treat it like a pet, and you can run it on-prem and you can manage it. You can also make sure that no data is left outside the data center. You can say that I can do facility inspection, I can comply with all the requirements because I manage it, I monitor it. There are two theories in this area. Next one is security policies. Again, like a lot of companies, like especially banks, insurances, like insurance companies, they have in-house applications, in-house security policies, how they should be managed, etc. And before you talk about moving that workload into cloud, those policies also need to be addressed in cloud most of the time. You have coupled applications, you have decoupled applications, legacy applications, cloud native applications. That's how it looks when you have basket of applications here. So obviously decoupled applications, cloud native applications, they are better suited for cloud, and legacy applications with app modernization, with containerization, they can be easily ported onto cloud. Of course, there is some refactor or engineering effort needed there. So always all these workloads will have shared services. So when you move something to cloud, make sure those shared services requirement is known to you. For example, Active Directory, DNS, DHCP, NTP. So it's not that you have to take the whole thing to the cloud, but you can have your workloads on cloud point to your shared services if they are hosted on-prem, unless you are moving them to cloud, which is possible as well. So how do you start journey to cloud? So you basically start with the advisory services. So unless you have all the skills in your company, a lot of companies lean on system integrators or IT service companies, and they will come and help you with advisory services, where they will come take a look at your workloads, your applications, how they are coupled, how complex they are, should they be retained, etc. So there is this Gartner 6 R's principle, right, methodology, where application is evaluated against 6 R's. So the 6 R's are basically retain, retire, lift and shift, re-engineer, re-platform, etc. So those need to be evaluated. Then once that roadmap is available, which the clients agree along with the service provider, then migration services start. By then you have your target, you have your landing zones on cloud. Then you can, so if again migration services, if you have 10 workloads, the roadmap is different. If you have 1000 workloads, the roadmap will be different, complexity is different, the approach to migrate also will be different. So that's how migration happens. And if it is thousands of let's say VMs and hundreds of applications, they are normally done via a wave plan. In advisory, they discover the workloads, then you do the different waves. For example, in the first wave, you migrate applications which do not have any dependency, which are like a low-hanging fruit, which are totally decoupled, right? So you migrate them. In the next wave, you look at let's say 2-3 workloads which are there in the same data center. They are talking to web, talking to database in the same subnet, that you can migrate together. And in the third, you address the complex workloads where, let's say, you have database in some other location, web in some other location, business logic in some other location. So they need to be treated differently, and they are a little complex. Some of them are hard coded. So they come in the last wave. So in some cases, like, you also need to build services on cloud. For example, you have to set up networks, you have to set up security policies, you have to set up VMs, load balancers, firewalls, web application firewalls, NAT. There are a lot of infrastructure components that need to be built in the cloud. So before the applications are migrated, so that's needed. And the last one is, now we have assumed that you have done the migration, the build is also ready, applications are running live. So somebody is needed to take care of those applications in the cloud. So that's the managed services or delivery services aspect. So this is the kind of journey to cloud thing. And there's one which I have not shown here, optimization, or in ITIL, it's also known as CSI, continuous service improvement. So continuous service improvement is, you look at the security posture, you look at the cost, you look at the availability, you look at the security aspect. So there is always some room for improvement, and its journey is like it's never over. So it's always continual transformation. So that's what this is about. So I've just put two pillars here. One is like what business or the service consumers think when it comes to cloud, and what the services provider has to do. Service provider here, I'm just considering it can be system integrator, it can be IT service provider who is helping the client. So what client is thinking? So in case of client, like, they are talking about the business transformation roadmap. So what is good for my business, where I should invest my money. So that's the roadmap discussion, which happens at CXO level, right? CEO, CIO, CFO, etc. Then there are different lines of businesses will present their own business priorities before a roadmap is established. So each of the lines of businesses will have their own products, their campaigns, etc. So there will be a product-specific roadmap that they will have in case of retail or finance, etc. So each of them will have their own. then they will have high level mapping of what capabilities are needed from IT, but they cannot do deep dive IT discussion here or IT roadmap. They will also look at their competition in this industry. If it is finance, if let's say American Express is doing something, they want to look at what Wells Fargo is doing, right? Something similar. So that evaluation is needed. Then skills, are they big enough? Do they have 10,000 people to do all these things that business expects? In most of the cases, it is no, and in some cases, it is yes, depending on the size of organization, the maturity of that organization. So now on the right side, if we shift the focus, this becomes a services specific discussion. So the SI, system integrator or IT service provider, they want to understand what are the requirements of this client. By understanding the requirement, they can actually provide the IT design or IT estate landscape. Then it also means they will say that, you know, I can provide you these skills, or I can outsource these skills with another partner, etc., and convince business that this service provider can do it. In some cases, it is like multiple service providers who will do it end to end, because if it's a big thing, then most probably IT, the service consumer will anyway have multiple service providers to address their requirement. These IT services also play a trusted digital advisor in many cases, because everyone has gone up the value chain nowadays. So those skills are available. Since they work with different companies in the same domain, whether it is banking, retail, insurance, or manufacturing, right? So they can actually provide the industry best practices to this services consumer, which is real value add. And if they have done the IT journey together, right, 2 years, 5 years, etc., then they can go together and co-create the digital assets, which is the highest level of collaboration, basically. I want to talk about cloud-born or cloud optimal workloads. So first one is artificial intelligence or machine learning. So these are pretty much cloud native workloads, and every week or every month you see new services that are getting launched, whether it is GCP, Azure, or AWS. So they have built a solid platform in this. And if you want to do the same thing with the on-prem or private cloud, I would not say that it is impossible, but I would say it takes a lot of investment to do this. And keeping up with the innovation that's happening elsewhere is almost, it's not, you cannot catch up with what's happening. So either you have to be too big, too rich to do this, or the best thing is go on cloud. The second one is big data or data analytics, cloud setting. We know how complex it is to set up Hadoop or big data cluster on-prem. So you can provision it on cloud and get going in a matter of 30 minutes, right? Excuse me. Data warehousing, I gave example of, you know, how you can run a query and you pay for the time that you run the query, whether it's in Azure or GCP, right? With things like BigQuery or SQL data warehousing solution, those solutions are available nowadays. DevOps, everybody is talking, every application developer is talking about DevOps now, and cloud is native to offer this DevOps functionality. So one is like you can set up your DevOps platform in Azure, GCP, etc. Or if you have some tools, if your let's say developers are exposed to things like Bitbucket or Jenkins or Bamboo or GitHub, right? So you can actually do your DevOps on cloud while integrating with those third-party tools. So you can integrate via marketplace now, So it's quite easy. Containers. So this is another workload. So nowadays we see everybody modernizing their applications onto containers, and all the cloud providers will help you run those applications on containers, and it's like matter of seconds where you can either launch containers or you yourself manage those containers by owning the Kubernetes cluster, right? So do you want just a container? Do you want a cluster? Do you want a cloud provider to manage the cluster, or do you want to manage the cluster? All these options are available. And with this web apps or mobile apps, right? Like now focus is shifting to NoSQL databases. Columnar databases. So, for example, games, WordPress, etc. So, NoSQL solutions are available in all the cloud. So, it's a very good platform, and I don't know how many have seen an article or video on YouTube. How did I, launch 1 million users in a matter of couple of months, or etc. So, if not, you can go on to YouTube and search that. So it gives the architecture of how you as a startup, right? You can actually launch your application on cloud, and you can scale to millions of users. Some of the pitfalls, risks, I want to just put some points. I mean, not everything is hunky-dory, right? So you need to evaluate the cost model, because on cloud, there is cost for running a cluster, there is cost for running a container, there's cost for running a load balancer, there's a cost for, let's say, managing a certificate. There is cost for data which is moving out of cloud to your data center. So all those things have to be evaluated so that there are no surprises. Then there's another thing that's up for consideration is the lock-in. So this is a debatable topic, but just have some strategy so that you don't lock into a cloud and then exit becomes a problem. It's not impossible, it might be a problem, so be aware of it. Then ease of migration of applications. So when you want to migrate your applications, make sure that you have a roadmap, you have an approach. How do you migrate those applications, test the application, then connect your real users to those applications on cloud. It's always good to have a multi-cloud model. So now if you look at some of the features, whether it is VMs, containers, clusters, load balancers, they might look the same on all the clouds, but if you double click, there could be some differentiators or value in one cloud over other. So take a look at that. So governance for the cloud model is very important, whether it is for the provisioning. So you want to make sure when someone raises the request for provisioning, you have the right workflows, approvals, etc., so that someone knows what is the cost associated with that asset or resource. Then it's also good to have tags which is make it mandatory for your developers or your IT folks, so that you have a tag to identify what is that asset, which line of business is using, which group is using, etc. Then you can also have policies. So for example, your development team should not go for a high-end server for their requirement which doesn't require high-end server. Or you can say that I will not let any of my users run anything during the weekend or after 10 p.m. in the night. So that's possible. You can also provide isolation by having different projects within the organization, and make sure that one project doesn't interfere with another project, so that you provide that isolation. You provide different users for different projects. That's all possible in cloud. This is my last chart. So basically, like what I have drawn here is since multi-cloud is the order of the day, how do you manage this? So at the bottom, you have different infrastructure providers here. You have something in your data center, something in Colo. You have infrastructure in any of these clouds. I've just shown 4: AWS, Azure, Google, and IBM. So what do you do on this infrastructure? So you will actually provision your resources, and there are workflows which will help you with provisioning in terms of like end user requesting the resources, and then there is a fulfillment engine to make sure that those resources are provisioned, they are approved, and the end users are notified when the resources are provisioned. Then you also want to track which assets are running where, because or else like you will lose visibility of who is doing what, who is doing where. So when you have these workloads that are sprawling everywhere, so that's why asset inventory, etc., they become very important, and you want to make sure that your businesses are not swiping their credit cards, they are bypassing the IT and consuming services on cloud, which no one knows, right? Which no one knows in the sense like IT doesn't know, and other leaders don't know what is the cost impact. So there is a parallel IT or shadow IT that is running, so that you want to avoid. Now you have AI ops, artificial intelligence ops, which can detect some of the anomalies in your infrastructure, and make some recommendations, and some cases ask the user to provide multi-factor authentication, ask some questions, security questions before allowing them to log in. Or if one person, one ID trying to log in from 2 different geographies, for example, Latin America and Southeast Asia at the same time, so that's an anomaly, right? So those things need to be detected. Then if you are catering to different lines of businesses, so cost management, invoicing for different lines of businesses, they become very important. So which can be managed in a multi-cloud scenario. So there are different solutions that are available. So some of the native solutions are depicted. For example, since everybody is talking about DevOps, everybody is talking about microservices and containers. So Google Anthos can actually provision and manage your containers no matter where they are provisioned, right? It can be in any of these infrastructure that I have shown below. So Anthos helps with managing the clusters wherever they are there. Tanzu also is playing in this space. That's a VMS solution, which used to be known as Pivotal. Microsoft Arc is there. Rancher. This is a This is an open source solution, and they also have multi-cluster manager capabilities. I've just gone one more level here. So you want to have your own automation, right? To launch your workloads. It can be on private cloud, AWS, Azure, etc., which you can do it via configuration management tools. There are many tools. I've just shown Ansible and Terraform. You can do that. You also want to manage these resources and make sure if there's some problem with EC2 VM in Azure, it raises one ticket, incident ticket in your IPC tool, incident problem change tool. So ServiceNow and Remedy I've just shown here, but it can be another tool as well. You also want to manage policies, which I explained in the last slide. So you can actually enforce policies when you deploy any resource anywhere. You want to have the same security policy, same provisioning policy, same hardening rules are applied no matter where they are, right? So it's all it all can be facilitated. So I'm basically talking about orchestrator solutions which are emerging in this area, so that you have visibility, you can ensure compliance, you can push policies, you can also do cost management, etc. So this is about best practices in this space. So with that, I'm pretty much done.
Ram, terrific presentation. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your presentation so that the audience can see our cameras. But
yeah.
very good presentation. Unfortunately, we are out of time for the live Q&A. What I'm going to ask you is I'm going to ask the audience to go into the link on LinkedIn and pose your questions there for Ram, and then we're going to ask him to go in there and provide some answers, some short answers to some of your questions, because we're out of time on this session and we need to start the next one at the top of the hour. So there was a question, just so you know, Ram, from Ernest Villaverde, who is launching 5G in Guam in the United States by NTT Docomo, and he asked if you have a relationship with them, and specifically he asked about the business case for SASE, which is Secure Access Service Edge. Again, unfortunately, we don't have time to discuss that right now, but I'm going to ask the audience and maybe perhaps Ram to stop by the LinkedIn for this conference, and then we can provide the answers there. Ram, I know that it's late in Bangalore. You will have really taken the time of your very busy day to share your expertise with our global audience. We're very appreciative of that. Thank you so much for doing that for us today.
Sure, Jose. Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this wraps up the second segment. At the top of the hour, we are going to welcome Dina Salah, who is a Google Cloud specialist with CloudPeda. And you do not want to miss her session. She's going to talk about infrastructure modernization and how to choose the right modernization path for your specific environment. Brian Raffel, conference director, is going to be introducing the next two sessions for us. Very capable hands and emceeing from Brian. And I look forward to continue your discussion tomorrow. And remember, you can go into the LinkedIn page and post your questions there, and we can have the speakers join us over there as well for additional Q&A. So Brian will be back with you at the top of the hour, and Dina Salah on modernization of infrastructure for IT. Thank you very much.